Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 27. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back here with us, Steelers Nation, for this Wednesday. Dave Bryan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Wednesday. Excited to get to it this morning. We actually we've got an Eagles beat writer on as well too to talk to later in the show.
Yes, we will have Dave. How do you say his last name? Spadaro, Dave Spadaro at Eagles Insider. Be sure to follow him at Eagles Insider. He hosts the Eagles Insider podcast. We'll have him on in a little bit talking Eagles and breaking down that game. And Dave, I want to send my condolences to you for the Eddie Van Halen news that hit home.
Oh yeah, look, I obviously growing up in the age that I grew up in, that was huge. I can remember pulling the cellophane off of Van Halen's original album back in 1978 as about 10 years old there, and obviously hearing Eruption for the first time, and growing up in that rock and roll era the way that I did, and the kind of music that I listened to, a lot of Van Halen listened to through that. So obviously Eddie Van Halen, a guitar god for sure. I knew he had been battling, some cancer issues. I didn't know how bad it had been, and boy, it was quite a shock when it. It's a realization. I've reached this age now where all the people that, kind of the people that you idolize growing up, whether it be sports or music figures or whatnot, all starting to die off now. So it was kind of I did a lot of listening to some Van Halen yesterday. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, that was definitely some very sad, unfortunate news to hear. But let's jump back into Pittsburgh talk here, and just apologize up front if my audio does sound to be a little bit different than usual. Hopefully it doesn't, but I have a new laptop, and I'm having a couple audio gremlins today that hopefully I'll figure out for Friday's show. But anyway, we will power through as the Pittsburgh Steelers are powering through after having their sudden bye week 4. And not to harp on this news too much, but Tennessee Titans continue to have more positive tests. There were 2 days in a row. The last 2 days, there were no positive tests, so those were good signs moving forward for their game against the Bills on Sunday. But Wednesday morning, at least 2 more positive cases of COVID, according to media reports, and that certainly puts their game against the Bills on Sunday in jeopardy, knowing their facility cannot yet open. So there's even reports and rumblings about a potential forfeiture the Titans could have for Sunday's game against Buffalo, which of course would not make Steelers fans, myself included, very happy. So still waiting to see what happens with the Titans game this weekend. Yeah,
we'll see. I know there's already some speculation out there about that, and I made sure to do some research this morning. There is no forfeit, no official forfeit in the NFL in really the history of the NFL. So it'd be really unprecedented if they did do something like that, and you would think that they would only do that if they found out it to be a lot of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for?
Something flagrant.
Yeah, flagrant. Really just snubbing your nose up, and with these protocols and all like this. So, look, I mean, they're already going to be penalized enough not being able to practice some this week, and obviously we've already talked a little bit about the NFL and the NFLPA investigating what's going on with the Titans. I know there's a report out there maybe this morning that maybe some players were off. Had some sort of, get together off outside of the facility, and it'd be very unfortunate if that's what happened and what kind of led to this, the spreading. I firmly believe that there's going to be fines, and who knows, maybe draft pick maybe taken away. I think that's a little extreme even, but I think fines are definitely on the table right now, depending on what they find in this investigation. Until there is an official forfeit, however, I'll be surprised if there's a forfeit, and I think I've got history on my side to have that opinion. So we'll see.
Sure, I think forfeiture is still the last resort, but if they don't play this game against the Bills just because the Titans are not able to play because of these still continued COVID cases, then I don't know exactly what the workaround is. I'm guessing the workaround and the fix to the schedule won't be as easy as it was for the Steelers. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't seen any potential options on how they could rearrange the schedule, but it's probably a lot more challenging to do. So I don't mean to harp on that too much, but of course, knowing that idea of a forfeit is even thrown out there is certainly going to be on the radar of Steeler fans, knowing that many fans wanted the Titans to be forced to forfeit their Week 4 game against Pittsburgh. So we'll see what happens.
We will indeed, and we'll have to see. I mean, look, here we are, and look, you've already had the Patriots got another player, tested positive there as well too. So. Yeah, it's one of these, and I think we've seen several Steelers players already talk about this as well too. And Cameron Hayward this morning talking about you had to know that maybe something like this was coming. You're not in the bubble, and that makes it hard to kind of control. And all it takes is one little mess up or two, and then you have a full blown, what you've had happen there with the Titans so far. So. I don't know. Just keep your fingers crossed, and we'll obviously keep reporting and talking about whatever happens that happens here in the next several days, and hopefully it doesn't lead to several more cancellations or forfeitures, and which some people are talking about here.
Absolutely. All right, bringing it back to Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin spoke to the media yesterday during his typical Tuesday press conference, went over the injury report, and had some decently optimistic news on guys like Derek Watt and Marcus Allen. Dave, you can go ahead and fill us in on what Tomlin had to say.
Yeah, the good news is, and it's kind of what we thought thanks to on what the pictures that we saw at the end of last week, is it starts with Deontay Johnson being out of concussion protocol. So I don't know what your thoughts are, whether or not he would have played against Tennessee. It doesn't matter at this point, obviously, with that game getting postponed and rescheduled for later there. But it looked like he was trending in the right direction at the end of last week. It looks like he's starting off this week on the right foot as well, too. And quite honestly, I'll be surprised if he shows up on the Wednesday injury report. The first one will obviously be released after practice later on today. So, that's the starting point. Now, we'll have to see if that postponement of the Titans game ended up helping Derek Watt and Marcus Allen there. Now, Tomlin said that Derek Watt is back running again. I think he said Marcus Allen is running in the pool. The big test, I think, with Derek Watt, is what is he? How did he term that? I wish I need to pull up. Only Tomlin can say something like he said. Do you have the exact quote there?
I do. When I first read it, I was like, was there an error in the transcript here? Tomlin says, quote, Derek Watt has been running some. We'll see if he can do the unanticipated movement that encompasses football play. So check that one off.
I have unanticipated. Hey, I'm 50-something. I have unanticipated movements in the morning. All right.
Okay.
I heard that, and it's just one of those things that you just got to grin every time. I mean, Tomlin he is a wordsmith of wordsmiths, and I've used that several times in this podcast, but. We will have to see what happens with Watt and Allen this week. I don't have a good feel for this either way. However, the Steelers' 4 protected players that they announced on Tuesday did not include one Trey Edmonds. So I don't know if you found that surprising. I don't know how much we should read into that, Alex.
Well, it is worth noting because they protected him last week when we knew that Watt was almost certainly going to be out, and they haven't protected him this week. So that may give some sort of indication that there's some level of confidence that Watt will be available. But I'm not sure. I know the initial media report, was that Watt was going to miss multiple games, so missing just one in the sense of he would have missed Week 4 had it been played. Maybe a bit of a quick turnaround, but he's a Watt. He's tough, so we'll see if he can do the unanticipated movements that encompass football play. My guess, though, probably won't play. I think Allen's got a better shot than Watt to suit up this week.
Oh, you think Allen's got a better shot?
Well, just knowing that last week, Tomlin seemed more optimistic about Allen's chances of playing than Watt, so I'm just kind of maintaining that track. But we'll see. We'll get the report and go from there.
And obviously, if either one of those two misses, then that sets up a good situation maybe for one Ulysses Gilbert III, right? Especially from a special teams aspect, because both those guys, Allen and Watt, give you a lot on special teams. So if either one of those were to – now, obviously, if Edmonds were to get promoted, you would think that he would dress from the special teams aspect. But until we get a better sense of what might happen with Trey Edmonds, if one of those two misses, that might potentially work out well for Ulysses Gilbert III. So we'll see. We're kind of in the same spot as we were last week, only with the fact that Edmonds was not protected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the 4 protected players were Deion Kane, Smallwood, Mondo, and Jay Elliott.
That would be correct, sir. I think that matches week 3? Was that right? I think those were your week 3 guys there.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right. So those guys cannot be poached off the practice squad this week. Anyway, all right, Mike Tomlin, other things that Mike Tomlin had to say. Someone did ask him, and it was interesting to get the response from Tomlin about them practicing on Monday, and we weren't sure if they were going to practice on Monday, or would that be the 4th day off, and the technically CBA mandated 4 days off needed to constitute a bye week. The team was off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but returned to practice Monday. And Mike Tomlin was asked about that and said, quote, "We were given special permission, and it's not really a bonus day. We always work on Mondays coming out of byes, but very rarely do we work on Thursday. The issue for us last week was that we didn't know that we had a bye until we were at work on Thursday. So the league was considerate of those special circumstances, and they allowed us to stick to our schedule. We did nothing special on Monday yesterday. It's just more general work for us in terms of getting us acclimated and getting back to work after coming off a weekend. So, while technically not a bye week, that is still the Steelers' bye week. That is not going to change, and the Steelers, I guess, were given that permission to kind of skirt the rules of the bye week.
And I guess if you really want, you want to place some blame here on them not getting a full bye week, put it on Tomlin. Right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they chose to practice. Now, I know that they were at the facility, but they still could have just canceled practice because the news of the game being postponed came before the Steelers began practice on Thursday.
Now, obviously, I guess Tomlin could have sent the guys home on Thursday and then said, look, we won't. I understand what Tomlin did, though. And look, I don't know. I'm obviously not there. I don't know how strenuous these practices on Thursday and Monday were. Judging by the pictures, there are a lot of people probably not in full, not doing much of anything there. My view would be if you're already at the facility on Thursday, go ahead and maybe tone it down a little bit, which they probably did. Just get some guys some work and take advantage maybe of being there and having it count. Monday, probably a different story, but I understand where Tomlin wants to go in that as well, too. We want as much normalcy as we possibly can, and during a normal bye, they would have had probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off and be back on what they like to term a bonus day on Monday. So Tomlin don't like to go off of the reservation, too terribly much there. And I understand what he did, but I mean, if you're going to point some fingers in this, obviously, I understand people saying, well, the league screwed the Steelers here, yada, yada. Well, go ahead and the Steelers didn't have a normal bye. They still probably could have had some semblance of a normal bye had Tomlin given them Monday off. So be careful when you have the one finger pointed out, because you have, let's see, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 3 pointing back at me.
Yeah, or give them Thursday off and not practice. Ultimately, on Thursday would have been an option to have the 4 days as well. Again, I'm not going to focus on it too much. What happened. Like you said, Dave, I'm sure this was not a rigorous practice to tax these guys too hard on Thursday or Monday. For that matter.
People want to find blame with something in anything, don't they? They want something to blame on right out of the chute.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been of that mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
But Tomlin did say that the one change, during a typical bye week is that usually some younger guys get to practice early on in that bye week at the start of the next week. Some practice squad guys, some good rotation there to give those young guys an opportunity to play. But knowing the Steelers never really knew while they were practicing the game was going to be postponed, except for that Thursday practice, those young guys didn't get the opportunity. So that is one negative from the sudden bye week, is that there wasn't really the ability to prepare and give those younger guys some much needed reps during your bye week.
Right.
Mike Tomlin also said, and one criticism he had of the team is the Steelers punt team must improve, and I think that's pretty obvious based on anyone who's watched it through the first 3 games. Dustin Colquitt, I think he's like 25th in gross and 29th in net, and has to be a lot better there, both him and the unit as a whole. And Mike Tomlin definitely made that perfectly clear on Tuesday, saying, quote, not where we want to be, not only with Dustin, but with the group. The collective work has to improve. We're simply concerned with about raw numbers, net punting, and where we are right now is not where we would like to be. And that is a very obvious statement.
Right, it is, and it's something that we talked about the other day. And look, I don't think they're going to be quick here. With per se running a guy like Colquitt out of town. But it needs to get better, and I think it's something that you really have to keep your eyes open with moving forward. Look, I mean, we're talking about a team that had Mitch Berger as a punter, right?
Right.
And they made it through a season and won a Super Bowl with that. So I don't think they're just going to be quick with the hook here when it comes to him. But obviously it's something that you want to look at. I mean, if there's a way to improve it, I mean, if it gets worse, and if there's something else better that the biggest thing is what's going to what's out there that might be able to upgrade you, and probably right now not much there. So obviously it's something that we'll be monitoring, and they'll be monitoring moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to see improvement there, and then hopefully it gets better sooner rather than later. As we touch on with Dave a little bit later in the show when we talk Eagles, the Eagles punt team has been fantastic this year, both in gross and in net, and so that could give them a clear advantage heading into this weekend. What else did Mike Tomlin have to say that caught your attention, Dave?
I think we buried the lead again, right? With the fans at Heinz Field.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I've been so frazzled with this audio stuff today that I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that is a good tease, and let's talk about that right now. That there will be fans this Sunday at Heinz Field. 5,500 fans will be allowed, according to team president Art Rooney. So first time all year, the Steelers will play in front of a home crowd. They got the green light from, I guess, the PA Health Department and Governor Tom Wolf to have, I think they could have had up to 7,500, but given the fact that they obviously have a staff and players, that reduces the numbers down to about 5,500. So fans at Heinz Field for Sunday's game against the Eagles, and of course, really looking forward to having some Steelers Nation back in the stands. Absolutely,
and I was a bit surprised. Were you?
Just the fact that there are fans, or the number, or in what way were you surprised?
I didn't think we would get that kind of ruling in October. I thought maybe the governor would wait until after these couple of games, and then there would be something later.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure. I was just kind of just waiting and seeing what the approach is going to be. But I'm glad there are fans. I think you can do it socially distanced and with masks. And of course, all fans will have to be wearing masks whenever they do attend. This will go to season ticket holders. They will, I think, have a computer generated random number selection for season ticket holders. So that's how they'll choose what fans are able to attend. No tailgating will be permitted, of course, and I think that's going to probably remain the same throughout the entire season. But yeah, I mean, regardless of surprise or not, just happy that hopefully they're moving towards getting more and more fans at Heinz Field.
I think our own David O has a shot at going to that game, right?
Yeah, he mentioned it. He said he thinks he's going to be able to make it, so hopefully he will. I don't know if that's been confirmed yet or not, because again, I think they're just kind of doing the random numbers to choose season ticket accounts. But hopefully he's able to go, and if he is, then we'll certainly get to hear from his experience.
And how big, I guess really only 5,500 versus, I would guess the other 2,000s like media and other personnel, right?
Right. I mean, you're going to have, concession workers, I guess, because those are going to be open, are they? I didn't hear about that, but I imagine that they're going to be like concessions and stuff open.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that deep. I haven't looked into that aspect of it.
But either way, the reason why it isn't the 7,500, as you said, media, obviously the players, the coaches, the whole staff support and all that.
Maybe some family or whatnot. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's why the number isn't the 7,500 total fans. But anyway, it's good to have that back, and first time playing in front of a crowd. And so hopefully for the rest of the season, I'm sure this is all subject to change based on COVID cases. I know they've been pretty low in Western PA, especially lately. So that hopefully we'll be able to maintain. I know Green Bay, for example, is postponing having fans because of some of the spikes in COVID cases, and we'll see how outbreaks around the league affect some of these decisions. But for now, there will be fans at Heinz Field this Sunday. Definitely looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
All right, let's see. Anything else from Mike Tomlin? He praised Vance McDonald, and I think that was someone asked that question. That was a good question to ask and to talk about Vance because he's only caught 5 passes this year. He caught 3 against the Texans, had 1 against the Giants, and only 1 against the Broncos, but definitely done solid work as a run blocker. That's become more important with Eric Ebron not being a great blocker, of course, and definitely gotten a lot of praise McDonald has from Tomlin and Big Ben about doing the little things, the dirty work, pulling in the run game, and just overall having a very team-first attitude.
Absolutely, and we've talked about how on the move Vance has been good. Obviously, putting him on the inner line of scrimmage is not something I've looked forward to really with him or Ebron this year. So I like how they've used him so far, and as we found out, talking to Dave later on in this podcast as well too, this is the Eagles defense that might be a little susceptible to the tight end this week. So whether it be McDonald or Ebron, maybe one or both those guys can get involved even more in the passing game.
Definitely. The Eagles linebackers have been probably the weakest unit so far this season, and we'll talk about that more with Dave here just coming up in a few minutes. But, if McDonald and Ebron can definitely, make an impact there in the red zone on third down, whatever the situation is, then I think the Eagles will look to exploit that matchup. But, McDonald he's definitely looked a lot better than last year. Last year, I'm very confident he was just not healthy last season. He was just playing through it, gutting through it because they just didn't have any other options at tight end. And with Grimbo being shown the door and Gentry being a rookie, he was not ready either. So you're seeing a much better version of McDonald, especially as a blocker this season. All right, Dave. I think that was about everything from Tomlin. Is there anything else that Tomlin you wanted to touch on?
I think that's got most of it there.
All right, Ben Roethlisberger spoke to the media today. I only got to hear a couple minutes of it and haven't really been able to digest it just yet. I know that he's certainly showing some frustration about how the NFL handled things week 4 against the Titans and saying they got the short end of the stick. And it's hard to disagree with him with that. I mean, the Seagulls definitely did not have a favorable outcome in that scenario, but Ben, I think, is speaking for all of Seagulls Nation when he talks like that.
With Ben?
Yeah, with Ben.
Look, I mean, he was kind of smart assy, I guess you'd call it this morning, saying, of course it's going to happen to us, and we've kind of said that right from the get go. Why does it always seem to be the Steelers, right? That this kind of stuff happens to here. Look, I mean, what are you going to do at this point?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. Like I said, no crying over spilled milk, but that was just kind of my initial takeaway from Ben. I know Ben also praised Vance, and as I mentioned, his contributions in the run game and just the well-roundedness that he has. I don't know if there's anything else terribly informative from Ben this morning, but I'll have to kind of go back through the interview.
He says, do you plan on continuing to work on your footwork on Wednesday? He says, really just depends on how his body feels. Obviously not having a game last week. I know he feels pretty good on today. It sounds like he's going to still take Wednesday off. So he'll probably show up on the injury report as being not injury related. There might be a few of those guys, bye week and all, and that's probably another thing that plays into Tomlin's decision to work these guys some on Wednesday is he's just going to probably stick with his plan and all. We're probably going to see, I don't know, Pouncey, maybe Cameron Hayward, name a few other of these veteran guys with the concussed birth certificates, if you will.
Has Joe Hayden been getting days off, or has he still been pretty steady practice?
I think he's been steady practicing. I'll have to go back and look. I don't remember him, but a couple of these guys he's probably going to treat with throughout the season on Wednesday with the kid gloves, if you will. So that probably played a little bit into his decision to practice on Monday, and probably not overly surprising. But Ben obviously probably not going to work today. It looked like he worked a little bit on Monday, according to the pictures that we see out there. I'm trying to scroll through the transcript here. What did you do during the bye week? He says, well, I just sit on the couch all day and throw every single day because my son won't let a day go by without playing catch. So it sounds like he got a little bit of work in that way, but it doesn't seem like anything mind-blowing coming out of the Ben Roethlisberger media session on Wednesday.
Any other Steelers news you want to discuss, David? It's been pretty quiet since we last talked on Monday. I know we'll have some more interviews today, I think, from Cam Hayward and other players to talk about the week and just kind of handling things coming out of that very sudden bye week, but not really a whole lot, I think, really on the radar right now.
Let's see. Troy Polamalu was back on the radio yesterday talking about, and that's always kind of a gem because I don't think he's a big fan of doing media sessions right now, but he had some positive things to say that we have written up on the site this morning about not being surprised about Big Ben's comeback so far, and he sees the Steelers in great position for success in 2020. So if you get a chance, go on over to SteelersDepot.com and read a little bit about that and listen to the interview, which I think Matthew Marksey has included in one of those posts as well. Interesting about Curtis Riley with the Cardinals. Obviously not going to spend a lot of time on this, but they parted ways with Curtis Riley, I think, yesterday there. He's back on the street, if you will. You think the Steelers will have any interest in maybe bringing him back to the practice squad?
It wouldn't shock me, but I'm not necessarily anticipating that right now. But if they do, then I think that's a quality depth signing to bring a guy like him in. And obviously they did not want to lose him in the first place. Yeah, he played, I think, like 60 snaps or something with Arizona, and then maybe they got healthy or something and ended up cutting him. But if they want to bring him back, I'm all for it.
All right. I think one of the things, we haven't gone deep into the tape yet regarding the Eagles, but I've given the sacks of theirs some look and some of the big plays out of their offense look so far. That defensive front is something. That's something that I'm sure you and I will be talking a little bit more about on Friday. I'm sure in the previews that you and the guys are putting up this week too, that defensive line will be covered quite a bit. And Mike Tomlin even talked a little bit about that defensive front, right?
He talked a lot about it. I mean, they lead the NFL in sacks right now with 17. I mean, Steelers are funny enough in second place with 15, even though they've only played 3 games. But yeah, the Eagles have, I think, 13 different guys with at least half a sack this season. That defensive line is deep. They've got 10 guys who have played at least 15 snaps this season. It's Hargrave, it's Fletcher Cox, it's Brandon Graham, who's, I mentioned on Monday's show, criminally underrated. Josh Sweat's kind of reviving his career. I think a former first-round pick that was pretty quiet to begin the year. It's everyone from those guys to T.Y. McGill and whoever else is throwing in there. So it is a very deep team. It's very Bengals-like in the sense of that there's depth, there's rotation, they're big, they're physical, and they're threats on both the edges and the interior at the 1 and 3 type position.
All right, what else do we have to wrap up from all that has transpired since, I guess it would have been, what is today, Wednesday, Monday? Probably not much, right?
Yeah, I don't think a whole lot. So let's do this, Dave. Since we just mentioned the Eagles and that defensive line, let's transition nicely into our interview with Dave Spadaro. You can follow him at Eagles Insider. Spadaro. I'm sorry. I'll get this right one of these days. Spadaro. Follow him on Twitter at Eagles Insider, and he is the host of the Eagles Insider podcast. So we'll talk to Dave and come back in just a few minutes.
Okay, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Wednesday, and that means we have a beat writer on from the opposing team that the Pittsburgh Steelers will be facing. This week it's Week 5. It's the Philadelphia Eagles, a game at Heinz Field. That means we're pleased to have back on the show. It's been a while. It's been since 2016, but our next guest is really good with the X's and O's. He was great on the show 4 years ago if you were around listening to it. I am, of course, talking about Dave Spadaro. He covers the Eagles for the Eagles official website. I believe you can find that at PhiladelphiaEagles.com. He also is the host of the Eagles Insider podcast, and that's probably a good week to get over there and get that loaded up. You can find that on Dave's Twitter account, and that's at Eagles Insider. And make sure you reach out to Dave after hearing this and thank him for being on the podcast as you do with all guests that we have as well too. So with that, that's a long introduction. Dave, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here, and it's good to be. You got me on a good week because the Eagles actually won a game. Okay, it's been a tough start to the season, so we got some good things to talk about.
Absolutely, and they did notch their first win. They are now 1-2-1. They with all that, they still lead the NFC East here going into Week 5. Let's start 30,000 feet. Let's start where Dave Spadaro envisioned this team being in Week 5 of the NFL season versus what the team actually is right now in Week 5. Now, obviously, they've had a few injuries, especially on the offensive side of the football, missing some key weapons there in some wide receivers. So why don't we start there, where they are now versus where you thought they might be?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me back on. It is a very unusual time for the Eagles. I'm not surprised at 30,000 feet that the Eagles are in first place in the NFC East, because I thought this would be a good team. Good mix of veterans, some young players that are trying to turn the roster over. But what I am surprised at is a 1-2-1 record. They've been really inconsistent, tons of injuries. Carson Wentz started the season with 28 fantastic minutes against the Washington football team, and since then it's been a struggle. So, you mentioned the offensive line injuries. It's the wide receiver injuries. It's way more significant. It's the wide receivers, Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, the first-round draft pick, Jalen Reagor, out. The offensive line, right guard Brandon Brooks, a 3-time Pro Bowler, tears his Achilles tendon in the spring. Isaac Seumalo, their left guard, out for a few weeks. Andre Dillard, their left tackle, out for the season with a biceps injury. The second string left tackle, Jason Peters, who they re-signed at the age of 38 to replace Brandon Brooks, and then he moved over to replace Andre Dillard. He's been placed on IR. So the injuries combined with just a bizarre little bit of inconsistent play and an offense that just hasn't gotten untracked. I really feel like Sunday night in San Francisco, the Eagles kind of saved the season with a big win on national television. But we'll see where this team goes. I think it's a team that potentially can be very good, but right now it's just really trying to find itself.
When you look at, based on what you mentioned Lane Johnson and all, I know they had a couple injuries. I think one in the secondary. I know Johnson left and then came back and then had to leave again and all like that. Obviously, the first injury report of Week 5 won't be out until later today after Wednesday's practice. You know this team better than anybody, Dave. What's that injury report going to look like Wednesday afternoon for the Eagles?
Yeah, so I believe here's what I believe it'll look like when the game starts, barring any setbacks. I think Lane Johnson will be very limited in practice this week if he practices at all. Ankle injury, he was in, out, in again, out again, in and again. Crazy on the offensive line, but I do think he'll play against the Steelers. He's a tough guy. I think that there's a chance that they'll get Deshaun Jackson back from a hamstring injury. I think there's a chance that they'll have Alshon Jeffrey back. He suffered a foot injury in December last year. He's been rehabbing since then. It would be great to get those two players back in the mix. The defense is banged up. Their linebacker, TJ Edwards, middle linebacker, he'll likely miss this game with a hamstring injury. Rudy Ford, one of their backup safeties and their ace special teams cover guy, he probably won't play also with a hamstring injury. I'm telling you, man, they are down to, they've already reached deep into the practice squad to make sure that they have enough players. Sunday night, Travis Fulgham comes up from the practice squad, literally was activated the day before, catches a touchdown pass from Wentz. Eagles win the game. Alex Singleton had never played many. I think he played 2 or 3 snaps last year. All of a sudden, he's playing a linebacker. He steps in front of a Nick Mullins pass and takes it to the house. So, you need those kinds of contributions, but this roster has really, really been stretched thin. So it's going to be a long list of players who won't practice on Wednesday and probably will be very limited throughout the week, and they'll just see who they can get back in time for Sunday's game. The Eagles definitely know that the Steelers are the best team that they will play this year to this point. I mean, this is a Super Bowl contending team. So we'll find out just where the Eagles are.
Did you, before I turn you over to Alex real quick, Darius Slay, did you mention him? I think he had left that game sort of.
No. He came back in.
Okay.
He came back in. Yeah, he came back in. He's okay. Yeah, same thing he did a couple of weeks ago. He's in and out. But, yeah, Darius Slay will play. And that'll be a great matchup. I would imagine they put him on Smith-Schuster, and terrific matchup there. But the Steelers have so many weapons. The Eagles secondary is going to get challenged big time.
Dave, I know you've had a lot of injuries, as you touched on, but one guy who stayed healthy is Carson Wentz. Unfortunately, he hasn't played like the Carson Wentz of old. It's been a lot of questions about his mechanics and regression there. What are you seeing with him? Again, I understand the injuries to the receivers and the offensive line have not done him any favors, but why is Carson Wentz not taking a step forward?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So last year, the Eagles have all these injuries, and Carson goes down the stretch. Eagles win 4 straight games against the NFC East, and he's 7 touchdown passes, no interceptions, really managed the game, took what the defense gave him, limited resources. And now, again, he started the season 28 great minutes against Washington. He was awesome. Eagles jump out to a 17-0 lead. And then since then, it's just been interceptions, lost fumbles, indecision, not seeing the field. So I can't pinpoint. I do think mechanics are not consistent. I think that the offensive line, the ton of injuries. I mean, it is teams are going to the Steelers are going to throw the kitchen sink at this offensive line on Sunday. It's going to be very hard for the Eagles offense to manage that. So what the Eagles are trying to do with Carson is just like get him out of the pocket, have some designed runs for him, have some simple throws. I think in the last 2 games, he's come around quite a bit. A tie against the Bengals, a win over the 49ers. But even with that, he's thrown 3 interceptions. So this is a kid who has thrown 7 interceptions in each of the previous 3 seasons. He's already got 7 now. So, I mean, we're looking at a quarterback who is battling something that he's never battled, and we'll see how he comes out of it. But certainly, if I compare the surrounding cast presently of like a Ben Roethlisberger to what Carson has, given all these injuries, it's not even close. So he's pressing a bit. I think he's trying to do a little bit too much here and there. We'll see how he holds up against the relentlessness of the Steelers defense on Sunday.
Speaking of quarterbacks, tell us about Jalen Hurts, drafted, bit of surprise by the Eagles this year. I know he's gotten some playing time and some specialty, I guess, Wildcat-type packages. I think 5 carries the last 2 games. What is his role, and do you expect that role to continue, maybe even expand as the weeks go on for Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shocking draft pick, 2nd-round pick. Great quarterback, obviously, at Alabama and Oklahoma. And the Eagles, look, Carson's got an injury history, so they want to make sure they have a young quarterback they can develop. Big arm, extremely mobile. His package has expanded. There was a play on Sunday night where he rolled right and looked to throw, nothing open, tucked it and ran. But I do think that the package expands because the Eagles are just trying to get as creative as they possibly can with limited personnel to manufacture points and drives and be threats. You know, there's only so much you can do with practice squad players who come up to the active roster. And so Jalen Hurts, you say, all right, this is a kid who's got, great mobility. At some point he will throw a pass and he will surprise the defense. I don't know when that will be. But yeah, the Eagles are trying to figure out any way they can to maximize their personnel and put points on the board.
When you go back to that last time we had you on, 2016 game, seemed like they used a running back in that game. I went back and watched a little bit of that. Not that you look 4 years ago, these rosters have both turned over quite a bit, but I remember Sproles and it just continually feeding him the ball in different ways out of the backfield. Is this a way to maybe slow down that pass rush of the Steelers in this game? Maybe try to use. I don't think Miles Sanders really has a long history of catching the ball out of backfield, but I know Corey Clement, is a good pass catching running back. Boston Scott might be as well too. Do you expect them to use the backs a little bit more, maybe in the screen game in this game against the Steelers?
Yeah, so Miles last year was actually a big weapon. He had 5 receptions of 20-plus yards. He was a big weapon, and teams are coming in trying to shut him down, not only in the run game, but in the pass game. He's actually quite a bit better in the pass game than you might think. He's really developed those skills. And they have the screen game has been a dud. They're averaging like 1.7 yards per screen pass this year. They've tried, but when you have so many changing pieces on the offensive line, you just can't get the timing down. And that's where the Eagles are with this. So even like they're going to have to figure out a way to slow down the Steelers pass rush, no doubt. I mean, what they bring on the edges, what they have in the middle, that defense is rightly so going to go after Carson. I mean, if you don't have threats down the field, if Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson play, they're not necessarily going to be sharp and 100%. And so what you do is you come after them. The weapons are, they've tried. Boston Scott was a contributor last year, moved up from the practice squad, helped the Eagles down the stretch. Hasn't been as productive this season. Corey Clement, great season as a rookie in 2017. Eagles win the Super Bowl. Hasn't been as productive. So Darren Sproles is a potential Pro Football Hall of Famer. Boston Scott has the same body type, although not as thick from the waist down. Darren Sproles was a powerful guy. They don't have anybody in Darren Sproles' class in a reserve role at running back. It's going to be a lot of Miles Sanders. They'll try the jet sweep. They'll try some little gadgety stuff with Jalen Hurts. Again, anything they can. It's really weird, guys. We have gone through the first quarter of the NFL season. The league is scoring points at a historically high level. And yet the Eagles are averaging like 21 points a game because they've been just making mistakes. They just get overwhelmed at the line of scrimmage, and the threats on the outside aren't necessarily, stretching a defense. They're not scaring anybody's secondary because without Deshaun Jackson, without Jalen Reagor, they just don't have that speed.
Yeah, I just wrote about earlier in the week, or just yesterday, I think, as well, too. The Steelers have one of those few teams that have not hit the 30-point barrier, and that's going on, since the end of, I think, 20-something games now that they haven't hit the 30-point barrier. Let's flip over to the defensive side of football. Man, you talk about the Steelers' defensive front. You turn on the tape, and probably no surprise, you look at this Eagles defensive front with Barnett, Malik Jackson, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, and, some guy over there playing defensive tackle named Javon Hargrave, who obviously comes over from the Steelers and really looks like he's starting to finally, obviously had that early season injury there. See that swim move the other night against the 49ers. Looks like the Javon Hargrave that we saw in Pittsburgh last year. Talk about this unit. I mean, is this one of the top 2 or 3 defensive fronts in the league right now?
Yeah, potentially it is, and that's the strength of this football team. The Eagles, to win this game, they have to dominate the line of scrimmage. And the last 2 weeks, they've done just that. They had 8 sacks against the Bengals. They had 5 sacks against the Niners. They've done a nice job, other than the Rams game, against the run. They're deep. Hargrave missed the entire training camp period, and he's now just rounding into form. The Eagles really think he's going to fit into this aggressive scheme. Fletcher Cox has had an abdominal injury, hasn't practiced much, probably won't practice much this week. They're trying to just save him and hope that he can get through the season without that abdominal injury. Expanding into something more serious, the dreaded core muscle injury is on the horizon. And so, but like off the edge, Derek Barnett, big game last week. Brandon Graham's always going to give you great effort. They do have a lot of threats there, and they'll test Pittsburgh up front, and they'll try to get after Big Ben. Ben's not going to really move around. I mean, he does move around. I will not criticize Ben Roethlisberger at all. He is a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he is not the most nimble guy.
Right. He
works the pocket well. He'll run when he's got a chance. Eagles have had some success against him in the past, and that's the way to look. If Ben has time, if the Steelers establish the run, and B, if Ben has time working off play action, advantage decidedly to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Eagles must get after it up front. And that's the strength of this football team. They've invested a lot in the D-line, and that's where they got to get the results. And they've gotten those results in the last 2 weeks.
Boy, and you look at the rotation that they use over there, Josh Sweat, and I tell you, Jannard Avery. I was big on Jannard Avery coming out, and obviously I think he started with the Browns and all like that. I liked him more as an off-the-ball kind of player, but we're starting to see him. I guess they're bulking him up a little bit, going to try to make more of a traditional defensive end, someone maybe that they can occasionally use out in space, off the ball there. But what kind of transformation have you seen? I mean, the Browns just kind of, I think, cast him to the side a little bit early there, but he's showing up on tape so far this season.
Yeah, it's been weird. The Eagles acquired him in a trade with the Browns, and he kind of disappeared. He really didn't get much time at all last year. Didn't get much time early this season. They haven't really figured out what to do with Jannard Avery. Sunday night, we kind of saw it. He stood up on the edge. He used his speed. He used his power. He was a good bull rush. I mean, he had 5 quarterback hits. I mean, he was a force, and the Eagles have to figure out how to fit this very unique player. He's a bowling ball who pass rushes, and so how do you use him? You don't put his hand in the dirt because he'll just get smothered by a bigger offensive tackle. So you do try to create some room and space. Maybe you line him up in a joker position. You line him up over the edge. You figure out ways to get Jannard Avery to be disruptive. Eagles accomplished that on Sunday. Now the Steelers have seen that on tape. So now the Eagles have to have a counter move. And but again, another part of the D-line depth that you're, again, going to have. Eagles must stop the run. Eagles must force the Steelers into third and long, and then they've got to get after Ben Roethlisberger. And, oh, by the way, because this defensive secondary, struggling. Darius Slay, excellent player. But Avonte Maddox, their starter, the kid from the University of Pittsburgh,
Right.
He's out on IR. I mean, they are stretched really thin in the secondary. And the linebackers have really been struggling this year to contain tight ends. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things going on with this Eagles defense. But if the D-line plays great, it covers up some of those sins.
Dave, you mentioned the linebackers and the struggling unit that they have going on right now. Nate Gary's probably the public enemy number one, it feels like, in Philadelphia right now. I know Jim Schwartz, I think, defended him the other day, but is that the guy to attack, number 47? Because it does seem like he's struggling in every game I watch.
Well, I'm not going to blame Nate by himself. Nate's doing the best he can. I mean, he's a solid player. He's certainly not a dominant linebacker. The Eagles do not invest in their linebackers. They used a third-round pick this year on Davion Taylor from Colorado. He seems to be quite a bit of a project. Another pick later on Sean Bradley from Temple, also down the line. And so they've not gone after they've not signed free agent linebackers. They've not used first or second round draft picks on linebackers. Their philosophy is to dominate at the line of scrimmage, and then the linebackers run free and clean up. What's happened, though, is that teams are isolating linebackers in coverage, and tight ends are absolutely killing the Eagles. On Sunday night, we saw George Kittle, 15 catches, 183 yards, and a touchdown, unlike 16 targets or 15 targets. It's ridiculous. But that's just the latest in a line of tight ends who've really hurt the Eagles. The Rams, Tyler Higbee had 3 touchdowns against the Eagles. It's been a struggle in coverage against tight ends. And so, you look at the linebackers, you look at the safeties, Eagles have not done a good job in that area at all. So I would imagine the Steelers will try to exploit that as well. Every other team has, and every other team has had success doing it.
And you mentioned the secondary. I know there's been some injuries and struggles there, but how would you describe the personality of this team? Are they going to be more man-heavy, more zone-heavy, given the injuries there? How do you expect the Eagles to attack Pittsburgh?
Yeah. They with Slay, they really changed the whole dynamic. They've gone much more man, and he'll match up with various. I was really surprised on Sunday night that they didn't put Slay on George Kittle or do something to try to take Kittle out of the mix.
How about a lead pipe? How about a lead pipe?
I think he might need more than one lead pipe to slow down that kid. That kid is a beast.
Holy moly!
But yeah, they're going to play man, and they're going to challenge you. And last year the Eagles gave up more 40-yard plus plays than any team in the league. They went out, they traded for Slay, and signed him to a contract. And he's the guy now. So he's a good player, and he's a confident guy. They just have had Malcolm Jenkins became a free agent. The Eagles didn't renew his contract, didn't do the 5th-year option or whatever the option was, option year for 2020. So he's in New Orleans now. They moved Jalen Mills from cornerback to safety. They've now moved Jalen Mills from safety to cornerback because of the injuries. They inserted Kayvon Wallace, the rookie from Clemson, who's still learning a lot about the NFL. So I would describe the secondary as one that will play man coverage a lot, but one that is prone to mistakes because they are just not as familiar with each other as you would like them to be 5 games into the season.
My last question for you, Dave, and I'll turn things over to the other Dave. Punter Cameron Johnston is third in gross average in net this season. It's a big step up from last year. I know it's only been 4 games, but I still think Steelers fans are pretty jealous of that considering how bad Steelers punting has been. So what's been the secret for Johnston and that punt team that seems to be playing pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, he's a solid punter. So I think he's really one of the best in the league. He's a good directional punter. He's had good success inside the 20-yard line. And he's gotten the Eagles out of bad field position. He's really flipped the field with a big leg. So consistent. I think the Eagles' special teams kicking game has been on point, very solid, as I knock on wood here. And, I mean, look, again, when you're a team that's got a very, very slim margin for error right now, everything matters. And the special teams, they returned everybody. Jake Elliott, the place kicker, Rick Lovato, the Pro Bowl long snapper, and Cam Johnson, and they've done a very nice job.
When we talked about the screen game and the Eagles offense here, Ben Roethlisberger probably going to want to try to get that foot, and he's done good really dating back to 2018. People don't realize that he's been really kind of a dink and dunk kind of passer. Obviously, he missed nearly all of 2019, but they had the screen game working quite a bit there in 2018. He was getting the ball out of his hand quickly. How has the Eagles defense done against the screen game so far? Kind of that quick release, that short passing game. Is that going to be one of the better ways along, obviously, with the running game and maybe trying to establish that? Is that going to be one of the things to watch in this game? Kind of the shorter passes to the running backs and the quick slants, just getting the ball out of Roethlisberger's hands. Good, because it looks like the Eagles really from the second level to the third level have a few issues with the tackling.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Like you talk about how the Eagles want to slow down Pittsburgh's pass rush. Well, I would think the Steelers will try to do the same thing with the Eagles pass rush. And the screen game has been moderately effective against the Eagles. There have been times when it was like the Rams just did whatever they wanted to the Eagles defense. I mean, it was just horrible. Washington moved the football in the second half. It got a little bit better against Cincinnati, although the Eagles gave up some big yards. I remember a 3rd and 15 little middle screen that went for 21 yards against kind of the picket fence defense. And then, we saw, Nick Mullins struggled on Sunday night. The Eagles had not had a takeaway in 3 games. All of a sudden they have 3 takeaways and they win the game. Oh, what a surprise. It's one of the key statistics in the NFL. Right. A lot of statistics in the NFL don't mean anything. Takeaways does. So I would think that, the Steelers should employ that. The Eagles have had some trouble. And the Eagles have to concern themselves with down-the-field threats. And the Steelers have a bunch of them with Johnson and with Claypool is his name, and also Schuster. So the Steelers come at you in a lot of different ways. The Eagles have to prepare for a lot of it.
I love all the progression. I'm in my 50s, all right? So I've been through a lot, but I love all the advanced statistics. But even so, I keep going back to turnovers and explosive plays. I agree. As being if you get a +2 or more in a game of what we call TOX stats, which is turnovers and explosive plays, you're probably going to win the game 80% of the time there. So Dave, with that, look, you've done this for a while. You're very objective when covering these Eagles. Obviously, look, if this game was being played in Philadelphia, it'd be a different story because I don't think the Steelers have won there in modern era. But this game is obviously going to be at Heinz Field. There will be finally, hopefully, some fans at Heinz Field. It is Wednesday. People aren't going to, they'll hear this later this afternoon. We won't broadcast it. If you want to make us a prediction here, what do you think is going to happen Sunday at Heinz Field between these two teams?
Well, guys, if you think you can call me objective all you want, but there's sure as heck no way I'm going to pick against the Eagles. So I'm going to say somehow the Eagles shock the world here again and beat Pittsburgh 24-20 Eagles. I don't know how exactly, but I'm going to say it. And I'm going to stick with it. And I'm glad there's going to be fans there. And we hope that in Philadelphia in the near future, we can get some fans into Lincoln Financial Field also.
Yeah, we hope that for you as well, too. Dave, look, great as usual, just as good as what I remember 4 years ago. And if something should happen and we have a Pennsylvania-type Super Bowl here this year, we hope to have you back on to help us preview that. If not, probably be about another 3 or 4 years down the road, we'll be talking to you. But we're glad to have you on a Terrible Podcast again, and we appreciate you spending your Wednesday morning with us.
Thank you, Dave.
Fellas, anytime at all, thanks so much. And it was really fun to do it. And good luck to you guys the rest of the year. Stay healthy.
And again, our thanks to Dave Spadaro at Eagles Insider, host of the Eagles Insider podcast. Really good to have him back on the show, Dave.
Absolutely. It's been a while. You 4 years, you kind of forget how people were, but once started talking to him, again, it all started kind of flowing back to me. Really good at what he does. And if people get a chance here at the beginning of this week, and obviously this will be a little bit of a shorter podcast today because, there's not a lot of news and things to discuss until we get into Friday, taking a deeper look at this. might want to run over and check out that podcast of his. I think you can find that on his Twitter feed, and also you can find it on PhiladelphiaEagles.com as well too. And look, we appreciate people reaching out to him and letting these beat writers know that we appreciate having them on. It makes them feel that their time is worthwhile, and I'm sure we'll have our usuals out there reaching out to these people. We certainly do appreciate that. And Dave was a good get once again, and glad to have him back on the podcast.
Absolutely, Dave. I did write an article on.
Hey, real quick, Bill O'Brien. Yes. Bill O'Brien got canned. What do you think about that?
I mean, he would not have been my guess for the first head coach being fired, but it was getting to be a train wreck over there in Houston, and you could definitely feel the tension in the room. That was a guy that seemed to be losing the locker room. Easier to say post-fire, I'm sure, but just a total mismanagement of the roster, and why, unless your name is Belichick, you can't do the whole GM and head coach kind of thing and expect to succeed.
I was not shocked one bit after, and I think if you look back at that game against the Vikings, they had a chance in that thing too, and just so much talent on that offense, and you can. But it's excruciating to watch those J.J. Watt press conferences. I obviously don't spend a lot of time running around the league looking at watching press conferences of teams that the Steelers don't play. But Watt's a high-profile guy. You had to wonder how he's kind of handling all this, and the losing, and him being up there in age and all like. It's excruciating watching him get grilled in a press conference. I think he's handling it well and all, but you got to really feel for that guy, And look, they got the offensive talent over there. Romeo Crennel, obviously not going to be a long-term answer there. I don't even know how what's going to happen with him being in the short term here with him. But I think Eric Bieniemy is the guy that they need over there. I think they need an offensive-minded guy, a guy that's kind of in tune with kind of what's going on. And I think Bieniemy would be the right spot choice for them, especially if they have the proper things defensively in place over there as well too. But I was not overly shocked when I heard the news that Bill O'Brien was fired.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more inevitable, but it's just crazy that Adam Gase still has a job and Bill O'Brien was the first head coach can. But I think Bill O'Brien's a really smart guy and a really good offensive mind, but maybe too smart for his own good. Might be the way I would put that for Bill O'Brien.
All right. Sorry I interrupted you there.
No, feel free. TJ Watt, I had an article this morning on Steelers Depot, Dave, about TJ Watt and all the records he set and all the records he probably will set throughout his career, but he is just needs 1.5 sacks to take sole possession of first place for the most sacks by a Steeler in the first 4 years of his career. Wood at least currently in first place with 39, TJ Watt in second place with 38. So he may do that against the Eagles based on their offensive line right now. And so TJ Watt, just to kind of show the pace he's on, is a pace that we have not seen before, at least since sacks became official in 1982.
Here's the thing with him. He's obviously on a tremendous pace. He's obviously, if he stays healthy, he's going to, I've talked for months now about him being a $30 million man for the Steelers this time next year. I can't believe some people are saying, well, technically because of the Steelers cap situation, they don't have to worry about TJ Watt until 2022. I don't know I don't know where people are coming up with that analysis and writing about that and tweeting about, well, they don't have to technically do anything, or they don't have to do anything with Watt until 2022. That's not good analysis right there. I guess technically because he's under the 5th-year option in 2021 right now. You let him play that out, and then you franchise tag him. Look. TJ Watt's not going to play for $10 million, nor should he in 2021 as long as he stays healthy. Now, if he has some sort of injury right now or something happens to play the rest of the season, then obviously that's something that you look at is not giving him a deal next summer. But barring anything really that extreme, TJ Watt's getting paid less than 12 months from now. You agree?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And the longer you wait, the more that price tag's going to go up. I mean, he's going to get done next summer. I think.
The meter is running, as I like to say. Mm-hmm. Now, on top of that, this guy is just, he as you said, these records are going to probably start falling with him. But when you get into the territory of James Harrison, is James Harrison a Hall of Famer, Alex?
I would say yes.
Why the pause?
Well, you were hitting me with a heavy question. I wasn't expecting that one. And I've thought about that. And it's a bit of a difficult answer because statistically, like they're not quite Hall of Fame numbers. 80.5 or 84.5 career sacks isn't generally enough to get you in the Hall. But for me, my definition is a Hall of Famer is somebody that was one of the most dominant players of his position, of his era for a relatively extended period of time. For multiple seasons, not just flash in the pan type of guy. And for me, Debo was. I mean, that stretch there in the later 2000s, early 2010s. He was one of the most feared, most dominant pass rushers in football. So for me, yes. Will he actually get in, though? I'm a little less uncertain of that. I think his chances are kind of 50-50, but to me, he's a Hall of Famer.
I mean, he's obviously got going in his favorite, defensive player of the year, and what he did in the Super Bowl will never be forgotten. Those kind of things, and obviously being the franchise leader in sacks. But even so, that number's not over 100, right?
Right.
I guess where I'm going with this is let's assume Watt does what we think he's going to do and continue on this terrific pace and probably not too far. I mean, how many more seasons, are we looking at? I mean, 4 seasons, maybe him breaking, setting the new franchise record,
Yeah, I mean, he literally could do that. He could be 29 and have the Steelers franchise record for sacks.
I guess where I'm going on this is how much further past that. And this is obviously, I mean, there's probably no reason for us to talk about this, but we are kind of short on subjects today. And you brought up, the milestones already in front of him right now. Assuming he gets to let's say that James Harrison point in 3 to 4 seasons from now, how much further past that does he have to go before we're talking about him, potentially being Hall of Fame kind of guy? And yeah, it is way early. I mean, this guy's still, on his rookie contract here, but you see where I'm getting with this?
Mm-hmm. No, and I touched on that in my article. Yeah, I mean, I think just off the top, I think triple digits is usually that signal where like, okay, we're in serious consideration. Assuming that's not just some sort of like 15-year career where the sack totals in any one season aren't significantly high. So if he passes Harrison and he gets 100+ sacks and he's on a track for Canton right now. I know that is early to say, but I mean, there's no denying it. He is on a track to be a Hall of Famer if he keeps up this current pace.
I mean, J.J. Watt currently sits at 98 sacks, I believe, right? Which has him, believe it or not, tied with Joey Porter, all right, at this point. And I think we would agree that Joey Porter's not going to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, right?
Right.
Now, Watt has been defensive player of the year. How many times over?
Once or twice, and obviously he's missed some time with injury. Had that dude stayed healthy, he'd be way over 98 sacks, and he's going to obviously finish his career with more. I mean, he's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Let's see. 5-time Pro Bowler is Watt. 5-time All-Pro. Defensive AP, defensive player of the year at 12, 14, and I think 15, right? So,
so 3 times.
So 3 times over. Let's assume that he gets at least 2 more sacks and hits the 100 number. Is J.J. Watt a Hall of Famer?
Yes, he's going to be in Canton someday.
All right, so does that mean that is he kind of the measuring stick then for his brother? I mean,
I don't want to do it in that sense, but because I mean it may be just unfair to compare the two, and they're 2 different guys and 2 different body types, 2 different positions. But
let me make it easier. Is the 100 sack mark the measuring stick?
Yeah, again, I don't want to use any one singular number, but I think, as I said earlier, I think once you hit triple digits, like you definitely vault yourself into that conversation. I'd be curious to know, and I'm sure there are some, how many guys with over 100 career sacks who are not in the Hall of Fame. I'm sure there are some, but I imagine that list is not terribly long.
I mean, believe it or not, there's quite a few that's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Okay, so you're looking at a list right now? I assume?
Yeah, I mean, Terrell Suggs is going to get in at some point, right? Right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, what number does it seem like if you get to that number, your chances of being in the Hall are very high, where it seems like the majority is at 120, 125? What number are you looking at that seems to indicate?
It seems like 125 because we think Freeney might get in at some point, right? And he had 125 and a half during his career. And then those guys after him, that's when the little plus marks stop, you know. At that point is right. Derek Thomas 126.5, Ricky Jackson 128. He's in. Lawrence Taylor 132 and a half. And then obviously you start climbing up. A lot of those guys are in. Julius Peppers, we think he's going to get in at some point with 159 and a half. Obviously Terrell Suggs at 139. DeMarcus Ware going to get in 138 and a half. Jared Allen, 136. I guess what we're getting at, and to answer your question, I would say is 125, albeit, I mean, how many more sacks does J.J. Watt have in him, right?
Yeah. Well, he probably will finish his career around that number, and just given the accolades and how dominant he was at his prime 5 years ago, he's going to get in for sure.
Does J.J. Watt have, let's see, 27 more sacks in him?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think he'll finish around 120, 125.
Look, I mean, the tape speaks louder than anything, but you can't help but think that there's going to be some sort of sack number measuring stick on this. Kevin Green went for a long time. People were wondering if Kevin Green was going to get in. When you look at 160, and he's got the third most sacks all time.
Right.
Why the hell did it take him so long to get in?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. As the train goes by.
So I guess where I'm getting at is I'm just wondering, and obviously we've got several more, before we can, hopefully we're not going to have this talk again probably for a little while here, but I wonder where that line in the sand is for a guy like TJ Watt, who has not yet won a defensive, he's well on his way to winning his first one, defensive player of the year award, but his brother's got 3, of them, and he's closing in on 100 sacks, and TJ's not even halfway to 100 yet.
Right. Yeah, it's all about the complete picture and other accolades, all pros, Pro Bowls, Super Bowl wins are always nice to have, of course, not a requirement for a non-quarterback for Hall of Fame. Really strong consideration. But I would say, if TJ Watt can hit at least 100 sacks, win 1 or 2 Defensive Player of the Year, and have the forced fumble numbers and all that he has right now with Pro Bowls and all pros that will inevitably follow, he's got a really good shot to be in Canton at the end of his career.
Hey, fun to watch. Talking about both those Watts, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they will add to their total, I think, this weekend against the Eagles.
All right. What do we have now?
I think that was about everything for me. So unless there's some other topic that you wanted to touch on, Dave, we can jump to some reader emails and close out the show. Again, I apologize if my audio is a little funky today. Just trying to figure that out here with this new laptop.
For once, they can't blame this on me, I don't think.
All right, what do we have in the email machine?
Let us look at the email machine here. Let's see here. I have to scroll down. Secondary from Thomas Lindsay writes in, Dave and Alex, hope you guys are keeping safe and doing well. Firstly, I doff my cap to you guys on by far the most in-depth analysis and thought-provoking podcast on our Pittsburgh Steelers. I listen to other podcasts who basically give a few sound bites and skim over game results, but you guys defo break down the X's and O's better than any of them. Thanks for that, because that's what we try to do. We try to go in depth in all of this. We don't try to just get the sound clips and go from there. A lot of Steeler fans are, let's see, he says, enough of me blowing you guys trumpets. My question is, a lot of Steeler fans are of the opinion that our secondary are having have an average at best season. My take on this would be more along the lines of our mantra this season seems to leave these guys exposed, knowing they are a high caliber unit, and focus on blitzing more to stop the passing game against us. I myself have zero worries about any part of our defense. It's easily a top 3 in the league group. If you look at how few points we have given up compared to the score fest we seem to be seeing everywhere else in the league. As they say in Bonnie, Scotland, Lang may your lum reek. That means long health to yours. Look, Lang may my lum reek. My lum reeks quite a bit, probably. from Bonnie Scotland. How about that? And keep up the good work. Regards, Tam. All right. I don't think I mean, look, it's worth noting that this defense probably hasn't been as good as what we maybe thought it would be on the secondary end of it so far. But I think you and I have already discussed a little bit that we're not ready to throw and break stuff yet, right?
No, definitely not in panic mode. I think it's a good point about how prolific offenses have been this year. We're seeing scoring at levels we've never seen before, even compared to last season. This defense was, again, spoiling us last year to an extent because it just was unreasonable to expect them to have that level of dominance to that extent. Again, they are blitzing some more, so there is some factors there as well. And it's still a really good group overall. And it's just hard to play good defense in today's NFL. I think the Eagles are still playing well. Again, the bottom line for this defense, to me, the mark of a good defense is situational football, takeaways, and sacks. And this defense can do all three of those things.
Here's the thing. We are 3 games into this thing, not a large sample size. Obviously, they haven't played the best. They haven't faced a lot of really tough competition yet. Although Watson is definitely the best quarterback they've faced so far. Keep watching the defensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat, because I still, it's going to be years before somebody gets me off this. And obviously you heard me talk about the talk stat with Dave Spadero about the explosive plays and the turnovers. That's key number one. If you have 2 or more total explosive plays or turnovers in your opponent on a weekly basis, you're going to win those games 80% of the time. That's such a simple stat that nobody wants to talk about it anymore because it's archaic, but it plays huge. Now, the second most, which I guess is becoming archaic, is the defensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. But until I find something otherwise with how important that is, I'm going to stay on it. And I think right now you need to continually watch that. And I think by the time, I usually like to really start posting and writing and talking about that more when we get into like 6 games, 7 games each for teams. You really start to get a good picture of how good pass defense is, and make no mistake, that's what that stat measures, is pass defense, because it takes into account touchdowns, passing yards, attempts, sacks, turnovers, those kind of things. That's where you're going to really start to see. So, let's see what happens here against the Eagles. Let's see what happens here against a better passing offense than probably we've seen in years from the Cleveland Browns, right, Alex?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the weapons they have over there; they should be able to throw the football here. So let's look at what happens defensively, pass defense wise for the Steelers defense in the game against the Eagles, in the game against the Browns, and then. Obviously they got a couple of tough games after that as well too that we'll be looking at, especially when you face the Ravens the first time. But I'm not. I guess long story short, I'm not worried about yet. They would have to give up a couple more big plays and 30 points a game for me to worry about this. I'm more concerned about the Steelers offense right now than I am the Steelers defense.
I'm with you 100%.
Cordell Carter, our buddy, writes in, greetings, fellows. As always, you guys are delivering the goods this year. I especially enjoy your deep dives into formations, defenses, etc. Please keep up the great work, and if you have any resources you recommend for learning more about the game, please share. I'm looking at it right now. The Pass Coverage Glossary by Cameron Soran. I got off of Amazon, a fairly new book. It's really easy reading with great diagrams there. You can do a couple of pass coverage schemes there a night, if you will, and probably get through this thing in about a month if you wanted to eat the elephant a small bite at a time there. So that's just one right there. Anything, there's so much great coaching clinics and all on YouTube right now. So you got any suggestions, Alex?
No, yeah, I think online, a lot of free resources out there, whether that's Chris Brown's Smart Football. If you look at Coach's Choice on YouTube, has a lot of old clinics that are a little bit dated, but there's still some really valuable information. So certainly you could buy something or purchase something. It's totally one route to go. But if there's just an insane amount of free material, I think, online.
All right, he goes on to write, why is everyone on the Sam Darnold train? Question, why is everyone asking about Sam Darnold? What about the way he has played in his NFL career to date is enticing at all? I understand he has pedigree, but seriously, I don't think he's an upgrade over Mason Rudolph, and I'm less Rudolph fan now after last year watching him play than I was when he was in school. Sam Darnold barely plays better than Jalen Samuels at quarterback in the Wildcat, and I think we'd all agree we never want to see Jalen throwing the football again. You're not going to get a disagreement out of me about Jalen Samuels not throwing the football again when it comes to that. Now, look, Sam Darnold's still early in his career, and he's got the pedigree, and there were the whole Ben Roethlisberger comparisons with Sam coming out. I liked Sam coming out. Even so, this is the whole, I think most of the people don't look at the details. They just look at the shiny object, right? And because he's a former first-round draft pick, because he's the Ben comparisons, because there's all this talk about him maybe being out of New York sooner rather than later, because Juju Smith-Schuster goes on a podcast and says, oh, yeah, I'd like to reunite with my former college teammate. What the hell? What is he supposed to say? No, I'd never want to play with Sam again, you know? You add all those things up, that's where you get the 80% of the fan base clamoring for the Steelers to go out and get Sam Darnold. I hope in our recent podcast, and I think even on our Facebook Live or YouTube Live episode that we had Monday night, there's no reason to believe that there's any chance whatsoever of Sam Darnold being a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, barring Ben Roethlisberger not being with this team in 2021. End of story.
Agreed. I think it's just fodder based on what Juju said, and again, just the whole shiny new object, new quarterback, and it's always fun to think about the future sometimes. So I think that's where that conversation stems from, the way it did, throughout the whole offseason about signing quarterbacks and backups and things like that. So really can't see a scenario where Darnold becomes a Pittsburgh Steeler.
No, me either. And just because I said it, though, doesn't mean people are going to stop talking about it when it comes to that kind of stuff. But look, if I thought there was a chance or could give a little more credence to all that, and you're not going to be done hearing about it. People are going to be, unfortunately, talking about this for a while when it comes to Darnold. I think Darnold just needs more time. I think he needs another. I think he just needs to be in a better situation, surrounded by a little bit more talent. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit more, a better position coach over there as well too. I'm not ready to put him in the Hall of Fame yet either. I think there's more meat on the bone that the Jets or whoever need to explore.
Yeah, Adam Gase clearly last year with New York, and we'll see though, because the Jets do have the first pick hypothetically, and they want to draft Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Darnold probably is going to be moved, but I just don't think it's going to be moved to Pittsburgh.
Mark Irish writes in, Juju is fungible. All right, he says, hey, Dave and Alex and the team, after your synopsis of what Juju's contract might look like, I cringed. 16 to 17 million, question mark. That money could be better spent trying to retain Bud or keeping Connor and Filer. With the success of Steelers drafting wide receivers, what we now have on the team, and the overall success they've had around the league, I'm beginning to think that wide receivers are more fungible than running backs. We're better off not re-signing him, guys. Thanks for getting me through the night shift. Robert, here's the thing. The only reason I brought up the contract with Juju is because I still have a lot of people asking about, is there any possible way that the Steelers could potentially get Juju back after this season? Personally, I think it's going to be, and I've said this right from the get-go, I throw that out there because people are asking me to throw that out there. That's why I put the example contract out there. A lot's got to happen to be able to get Juju back in the fold, and I think it would be around the $16 to $17 million per season range. Do I, where I sit right now, do I think they're going to do that? No, but it's not it's not as impossible as Sam Darnold being a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just because I don't think it might happen doesn't mean it won't. But if it did happen, it'd be along those lines. Now, wide receivers being fungible. I think history shows that the Steelers do an incredibly good job at scouting wide receivers, but they do miss. There are the Lima Swedes, out there in this. I don't view. Where do you come in on wide receivers being as fungible as running backs?
Yeah, again, I think Steelers fans are certainly spoiled by the success overall that Kevin Colbert and the Steelers have had drafting the position. It certainly helps to make your receivers look good. And Colbert's made this point many times before, is when your Hall of Fame quarterback gets to throw to receivers, that makes your guys look a whole lot better. So that's probably played a factor as well. I mean, it certainly has, I think, become easier to find receivers in the sense of the college game produces so many of these guys in the spread systems. Obviously, there is a big jump and hurdle to make from the more open zone coverage, off coverage college game than it is to the NFL, which is more man heavy, more press coverage, more physical, etc. But I don't think it's more fungible than receivers, just because you need more receivers. First of all, you need 3 to 4 at least to have yourself good depth in a good rotation, and still, I think it's harder to scheme receivers to succeed than it is to scheme a running back to succeed. So I don't view that position as more fungible than running back.
Yeah, me either. And he goes on to talk about that money could be better spent to retain Bud or keeping Connor or Filer. But Bud's, regardless of what happens, Bud's not going to be back. So you might as well just quit talking about Bud. Connor, if Connor comes back, it's going to be on a minimum deal. Filer, I don't see Filer coming back right now. If you want to create, save money to maybe retain anybody, it's probably going to be Mike Hilton. And that's a big
You think
if.
Hilton has a better chance than Filer to resign?
Yes, and that's not much of one.
Right, but Hilton's going to cost more than Filer.
Sure. But I mean,
Okay.
if you're talking about he's talking about carving out money to
Sure.
retain Bud. I'm saying that if you want to talk about carving out money to save somebody, it would be Hilton.
Mm-hmm. I got you. Okay.
And I'm not thinking that's going to happen.
Mhm.
But let's see here. Ted Webb writes in about Minkah Fitzpatrick. Seems like last few games of 2019 and so far 2020 season, Minkah not flashing on my screen as often as he was when he first got here. I know offenses are maybe staying away from him, but am I missing something? Well, no. They're moving him around. He's not being targeted, I know you guys go over all 22. Maybe you guys are seeing stuff I'm not seeing through TV broadcasts, and he's more involved, and I'm not just seeing it. I just thought he would have made a splash play or even making some plays all over the field. Thanks, Ted. Ted, look, I mean, they're staying away from him. They're moving him around a little bit all over the formation, trying to get him in position. But it also has only been 3 games on top of it, and I think Steeler fans got a little bit spoiled in that first handful of games. Minkah was in Pittsburgh with splash plays as well too. So I think you add all that together, and then you add in the old results bias aspect that he's not making plays right now, and you get where you've gotten asking this question. I'll go back to what I said about the secondary as a whole. I'm not worried right now. I'm going to need a lot more to worry about Minkah not having interceptions. I'm going to need a little bit more to worry about Steven Nelson, maybe giving up a few touchdowns so far. Come at me in 2 more games.
Yeah, I echo everything that you said, Dave. I mean, they are trying to spin him down on 3rd down. They're doing things like rotating Hilton to the deep half, Sutton to the deep middle. They're trying to get Fitzpatrick closer to the line of scrimmage to make some more plays, because offenses have not really done a whole lot to challenge him for sure. But overall, you do want to see splash from the scoop. The article I had a week or 2 ago was it's been, 10 games now since any Steelers safety has recorded a takeaway, an interception, or a forced fumble, the longest streak in the NFL, and you got a pair of first-round picks back there in Edmonds and Fitzpatrick, and you don't want that streak to continue. So it's not a major concern. Fitzpatrick's playing fine. Hopefully the big plays will come, but there certainly is a drought there. There's no question about that.
And look, you had one of those interceptions they had last year was forced technically by Joe Hayden. They ought to have assist, interception assist on it. If it was not for me, there'd be like 80 categories of stats every week, new stats they can add to this thing. But yeah, we're not worried yet when it comes to that. Let's see what happens again this game against the Eagles and the game against the Browns, and then sit back, at near the halfway mark, and then make a better determination about what this pass defense is and isn't. Now, obviously, with the shape that this offensive line is with the Eagles right now, and their weapons, we'll see what weapons they do have healthy, and even if they are healthy, they're probably not going to be 100%. If the Eagles come up and put it on the Steelers secondary, then yeah, we'll obviously be talking quite a bit about that come Monday. But until that happens, it's all results bias right now. Look, I know it doesn't qualify, Alex, and I'm not meaning this negatively here, but I mean that play that Edmonds made on that sack on fourth down in that game the other day, that was a huge play against the Broncos.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, full credit to Edmonds for timing that up and finishing the play and helping to preserve and seal that victory. I mean, that was definitely an impactful play.
All right, one last one. Gilbert, the new fort. This one from Garrett Hunt. Hey, David Knox. First off, just want to say thank you for your level-headed coverage overall, and specifically with the delayed game. As you stated, there is no perfect solution. It is just about trade-offs, and the league is handling it the best that they can. I guess that some fans believe the league should revolve around the Steelers. Yeah, look, I mean, people get the Homer glasses on. They look, it sucks. And even before this, Alex and I said, boy, it always seems like the Steelers are involved in situations such as this. I hate it. I hate it for everything, but I mean, you got to kind of look at this thing and look at all aspects. And no, I don't think this is the league trying to screw the Steelers. It's unfortunate. Let's watch and see how this thing plays out this week with the Titans with these additional tests, and let's see if a game actually gets forfeited. But I did say, look, there's a better chance of a game getting forfeited after this past week, because the league's coming out and saying, look, if we find wrong, you got to slap the hand at least once and threaten sending the kid to room without dinner before you actually send the kid to the room without dinner, right?
I think that's how Goodell framed it. Yeah, I mean, again, I think forfeit is still.
There's a note. I got sent to my room a lot without dinner, right?
Mm-hmm. You got to say supper. That's a very old man phrase to use there. You got to say supper instead of dinner. But yeah, I think forfeit is obviously the point of last resort. It's not a precedent the NFL wants to set, and the chaos about that, and that would just create so much more controversy on every side of the coin. So it's not my expectation if that's going to happen. I think for it to happen, the NFL would either just have to realize that whatever team is in jeopardy of forfeiting, either completely, which is flagrantly flouting the rules and were reckless and put themselves and everyone else in harm's way, and really have no other solution to fix the schedule either. And so that would be, I think, the only scenario where a forfeit would come into play. But certainly the NFL is cracking down. And again, I don't know which way the NFL is going to go if the Titans game cannot be played Sunday, which is kind of where it's trending towards right now. I don't know how they're going to fix that. I don't know if there's any schedule fix or not. So we'll just have to keep an eye on the situation and see what happens.
I don't need a negligence was the word I was looking for about an hour and a half ago when we started this thing. Talking negligence was the word. There would have to be you don't want to get into having, if you can help it, you don't want to have to get into a habit of having forfeits with these games, right? That's the last thing that the league wants to. Now, obviously, if it's proven negligence on top of negligence after a warning, well, then that's one thing that then warrants a forfeit type situation. But nothing, in my opinion, that has happened right now up until this point with the Tennessee Titans says that they should have or should have to have had forfeited their game against the Steelers. In the story. And I know what's going to happen. People are going to say, if for some reason this game against the Bills and the Titans, it winds up being a forfeit, then it's going to be, oh, well, then why didn't the Steelers get a forfeit?
Yeah, well, I can definitely sympathize with that. I'll be very frustrated by that situation too. But let's just see what happens. I don't think it'll come to that. I won't discount it entirely. But I obviously that's not a situation that anyone wants to have to deal with.
All right, he goes on to say, my question is about L.J. Fort. Why do you think the Steelers literally signed Spence off the street? What are we going back? What year is it? Why?
17.
Yeah. Why do you think the Steelers literally signed Spence off the street before giving Fort a chance? Hurts me every time he makes a play for the Ravens. Obviously, too early to tell, but the Gilbert situation scares me. That is heading in the same direction. I'll tell you. Look, I mean, even David Todd, when he was with me, both him and I just were dumbfounded at the time. And really it all, most of it stems back to that decision going back to like the game or two earlier that Fort played against the Ravens. Remember that game? And Fort was all over the place in that game. And then it led you to believe, okay, we get why Spence was re-signed, but why isn't Fort in there getting the first crack? That was a huge mistake, and I think we both agree that they made with Fort. Now, here's the difference, in my opinion right now when it comes to Ulysses Gilbert, and why right now it's not the same as an LJ Fort situation. We got to watch Fort play meaningful snaps against a good team. All right. And we saw what Fort did. And I can't remember. I want to say it was like 28 snaps. You probably looked that up and probably say, Dave, how the hell did you get that? But that's the number, 20-something snaps. And he played. I remember writing and posting about it on Twitter how well he played in that game, that one specific game against the Ravens. All right. And then you fast forward, a week or two later, and then Spence is in there. It was dumbfounding. So, and Garrett, context here, he says, obviously too early to tell, but the Gilbert situation scares me that it's heading in the same direction. We don't know anything about Ulysses Gilbert. I know Alex is a lot higher or seemingly higher on Gilbert than I am, but he also watched Gilbert in training camp last season. I did not. All I had to go on was Gilbert's college tape, which I was still kind of questioning, some of the special qualities that he had, and then obviously the preseason tape last year, which wasn't a lot of it. Now that doesn't mean, that Alex is over-evaluating Gilbert to this day. The problem is that we've yet to see Gilbert play any meaningful snaps in a regular season. So that's where I think it's different than the situation with LJ Fort. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah.
Your turn.
Well, yeah, to the first question, just overall, why did Fort not play? I think it was just a mistake. I don't have a good answer for you. I think it was the wrong decision. I think it was proven.
Huge mistake.
Yeah, absolutely massive. I mean, for a team with a next man up mentality to just not have Fort play that, to have his role ascend and sign Spence off the street cold and move Moats from outside linebacker into linebacker just never made a lot of sense. So there's no good explanation for it. If you're looking for one, you're not going to find it. To what makes this different with UG3, I think you're right, Dave. Yeah, I mean, Fort was playing on Sundays on defense and playing well. You get to see that with UG3. He's a second-year guy. Fort was a lot more well-traveled and a veteran guy. Coming over, I think, from Cleveland when Pittsburgh signed him in training camp. So there's a different scenario there. I understand maybe that fear and concern, but the circumstances, I think, between those two guys are pretty different.
And I'm not saying that Gilbert might not still become something. Hopefully he does. I mean, you got a later round draft pick in him, and he's got a degree of athletic. Look, we see what happened we just got done talking about Jannard Avery. I've kind of, I was higher than most on Jannard Avery, and here he is looking like he's getting a chance with the Eagles and doing well. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Gilbert. I think it's just way too early to do anything with the baby in the bath water when it comes to Gilbert, and in no way, shape, or form. Look, there's a reason LJ Fort's sticking around in this league. There's a reason guys like Jordan Dangerfield stick around in this league, and it might be a little bit more than just special teams. Now, LJ Fort is a great special teams player, but the thing with LJ Fort that still got me was going back, I think, mostly to that game against the Ravens there in the 20 whatever snaps or 30 snaps, whatever it was that he played, thinking, my goodness, well, why are they bringing Sean Spence back off the street and starting him ahead of him?
Yeah, that never made a lot of sense. By the way, some Pittsburgh sports news: Matt Murray has been traded to the Ottawa Senators for John Gruden and a second-round pick. Twitter's having fun with that one.
All right. Anything else you got for us, Alex, other than you want to get off this thing and get that audio straightened up?
Yeah, it's the next 3 hours of my life. It's going to be testing audio. A lot of fun with this new laptop. Had a Dell technician out yesterday to fix stuff. More audio fun today. So having a good time over here. But we'll be back Friday to talk the Eagles game.
All right, let us leave the people with this. Reports on Twitter say Doug Peterson say Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey are getting closer. Jackson will do some individual work in practice today. Wouldn't say if Jackson or Jeffrey will definitely be ready for this week's Steelers game. It sounds like, talking to our buddy Dave Spadero, that probably a better chance than not both those guys will be back. So that would be huge for that offense if they get a couple of playmakers back in Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is especially with Jackson, some team speed for sure can be a threat. So the Eagles are dying for some receivers out there. If they can get healthy, that'll be huge for Carson Wentz and company.
All right, we got about an hour and 35-minute podcast out of an hour podcast. Hooray for me. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. And also, if you'd like an ad-free version of Steelers Depot for $25, you can have one. Go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, get yourself a username and a password. You'll need that. You just don't pay for this and then it automatically stops showing ads at you. You've got to hit the login button on Steelers Depot up top in a navigational bar, enter in that username and password, and then that's how you get access to the ad-free version. It's still been popular, even as confusing as that might be, so we invite everybody to do that. Alex and I will be back on Friday to fully go over the preview of the Steelers game on Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles, and pray for Alex's laptop, please. And in the meantime, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.